Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. I've been away only for one night, well, one day, a night and a day, returning to Ayutthaya, I think it is called, somewhere the other side of Bangkok from here. The abbot at this monastery asked if I would go with him to the celebrations of a very senior forest master, monk of this colour anyway, in this place, a very big temple, the other with stupas and chedis, somewhere just the other side of Bangkok, for his 78th birthday celebrations. And it was a very large, well attended, well supported, auspicious occasion, with hundreds of monks and thousands of lay people, and something I'm quite used to from India. But what was different was all the monks were the same, all this colour, from this Dhammayut side of the Theravada tradition here in Thailand. So these brownie coloured robed monks rather than the bright orange robed monks. And I'm used to a whole mixture in other countries where all the traditions are coming together at one location. And it's besides the point. It just seemed to me a very special occasion, and a very encouraging and reassuring occasion for me to feel amongst so many other monks whom are doing the same thing. And I can say that because we are practicing. We're Kamatana monks. Our work, that's working monks, but our work is Sila, Samadhi, Panya, keeping moral virtue, meditation, and developing our minds. It's very reassuring to be among so many, but also, having come from this very secluded and unique forest monastery, where there is just up until, and there's another part to this story coming, up until a day or so ago, just us 3 or 4 monks and 1 neem or samanera, novice. But in my absence, another Bhikkhu has arrived, and that means there are now the 2 ajahns, or the 2 most senior monks here, that have been with me here all along, and now 2 other senior monks, no, 2 senior to me, everyone's senior to me, until now, because as well as this other monk that has joined us, a new monk was ordained yesterday. Not actually here. I think they took him into another temple for his ordination ceremony and brought him back, but he's staying here, and I think probably for a period of time. So this is the kind of temporary ordination that goes on with very many males of the family in this country as part of their strict Buddhist tradition. So we're now what, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 1 novice. 6 monks and 1 novice. So when they take temporary ordination, they go straight in. They are bhikkhus. This is for the Thai people, men, because they've grown up in Buddhism. They don't have to go through the years of rigorous getting to grips with the understanding of Buddhism that people like me from a non-Buddhist country in a different culture, we have to go through a lot more training before we can really become bhikkhus. So we are an anagarika, for instance. We go into white robes in the monastery for 1 year, and then at least 1 year as a novice, a samanera, and then only then can we take upasampada and become bhikkhus. Which is understandable, because we haven't grown up in school learning the teachings of the Buddha. Everyone here in Thailand, males, females, children, adults, old people, they can chant all of the Buddhist chanting that I've had to struggle to learn over these last few years, and are still continuing to struggle to learn. They've grown up with that. So they come for their temporary ordination and they become monks for a period of time and are fully equipped, other than, of course, the renunciation. The hair is shaven, the clothes are given up, they're given a name, robes, a bowl, shelter, and food each day and their requisites. And this is the real training, where the real training starts. The training of the mind. And that is really what I wanted to talk about today. That when I was with this whole big festival of an occasion, many stalls with wonderful coffee and various other things going on during the morning food-wise, and then presumably for the lay people at other times. And you couldn't want for anything, really, as a monk. They were people bringing you things all of the time, as well as then the walking around with our bowl on Pindapat, like an alms around, but within the compound, with all of the lay people wanting to put even a teaspoon of rice. So many of them, the bowl was very full and you had to keep emptying it. Their dedication, their devotion, their need for generosity and giving, which strengthens the deepness of their faith here, the Thai people in this country. And anywhere you go where people are practicing Buddhism, they soon learn that the greatest shortcut to contentment and happiness is to give. One of them. It's a very good way of making yourself feel good, to give to others. And there was this, and then of course the more formal situation of sitting in the Dharma hall, a huge hall with a beautiful Buddha Rupa statue, and under a beautiful dome upstairs were, well, I won't try and describe it all, just very, very beautiful, very tasteful, and in a lovely environment with lakes and forests. But I was with all of these other monks. You feel like a toy soldier amongst many other the same toy soldiers all lined up like this. But this time I didn't feel like that, and I felt very relaxed. And listened to the Dharma talks. They were in Thai, so I couldn't understand them. But I pick out the Pali words. I get the gist, the context of what is being said. It's addressed to the lay people also, so it's fairly straightforward to pick out enough to allow the Dharma to sink in. And I felt relaxed, and it brought to mind previous occasions, one in particular, when I was last at an event, an occasion. I think it was one of the Katinas, whether it was last year at the end of the Vasa or the previous year at the end of the Vasa. This big coming together of all the monks, or it may have even been on the well, whatever the occasion, it doesn't matter. But I think it was in our main centre in Bangalore, in India, and there were many, many monks and many, many people. And I'm sitting on the stage, we're on this upraised platform. And one of my teachers then, who was sitting next to me, he looked at me and he said, "Dhammarakkhita, Nama Rupa." Actually, he said Dhammarakkhito, because he always calls me Dhammarakkhito. And I thought, Nama Rupa. Yes, he's referring to body and mind. And I think he's saying to me, it's just body and mind. He'd clearly seen from my facial expression, no miracle of mind reading, but from my facial expression, I wasn't enjoying being amongst so many people with so much chanting and goings on. And ordinarily I don't enjoy such things, having a preference these days towards solitude. And he was saying to me, look, this is just body and mind. You're in a situation. It's just that. Let it be. Ride through this occasion. It will soon pass. And I kind of thought, well, it's all well and good thinking that, but this body and this mind is still here. It still would be rather somewhere else. Or still would rather be somewhere else. But then looking at that, I understood that that is just not wanting something that I'm experiencing. And one could reverse that situation, be alone, and if you had a tendency towards aversion of solitude, you would not like that and want to be in a more busy, conducive environment to that type. So it really is just mind and body. And there are these two words, kaya, which came up in my mind between, well, actually one of the words came up in one of the Dharma talks. So it got me thinking. And they are kaya viveka and chitta viveka. Kaya viveka was the word that came up, and I'm not sure in what context, but it means, viveka means refuge, or let's say shelter, protection, a home. We know what a refuge is. We have refuges for people who are victims to go for safety. It's a place of safety. We take refuge in the triple gem, Tisadhana, when we take Panchasila, which is the 5 precepts, Tisadhana and Panchasila. The triple gem being the Buddha, our teacher, the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha, the subsequent teachers of those teachings. And we take refuge in that as our reminder of that safety, that protection that we have from those triple gems, jewels, precious, you see, those precious Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, those three precious things that are our teachers. And our refuge is in KAYAVIVEKA. Kaya means body. So we have this refuge for our body, and CITTAVIVEKA is refuge for our, mind. Nama and Rupa. Rupa is body or physical things, and Rupa and Nama is mind. As in the mind we understand, the thinking mind, the mind that may be considered in all aspects of psychology or psychiatry or mind, the common understanding of mind. And then we also have the brain, which is like a computer, which is a thinking brain. And there's lots of merging between the two ideas. And then just to confuse things further, there's this understanding in Buddhism, in this tradition, of the citta, which is actually, we call it the heart mind. So it's a bit like when people use a love heart or they say they're in love, they refer to their heart. Now they don't mean this organ that is pumping blood around your body, a muscle, a piece of meat and flesh. They're referring to something a little bit more esoteric, yes, something a little bit less specific. And the citta is more like that, the heart mind. So it is that what knows, puru, this that knows our emotions, our feelings, and what is happening. And in CITTAVIVEKA, there is a refuge for this what knows, the citta. In KAYAVIVEKA, there is a refuge for the physical being, the body. Now, where is most suffering coming from? What is most suffering caused by? Now, of course, the original cause, root cause of suffering, we know from the Four Noble Truths and then the teachings of the Noble Eightfold Path, is desire. But on a practical level, when we look at how we bring about suffering for ourselves in our daily lives, and we're placed in a situation where we don't want to be, we are experiencing at that point in time suffering of a physical nature or an emotional nature or a combination of the two. Now, by very far, the hardest to, when you don't understand it, the hardest to give refuge to is that of emotional suffering. With our bodies, if we're cold, we can go into a warm environment, thereby giving our bodies refuge to keep them cold. Or if we're hot, we can find cool. If we are frightened, we can use our bodies to run away. Therefore, combining this fear emotion with the use of our bodies to escape. Or if we're really wanting something, we're liking something, we can go to, using our bodies and this desire to go to this, whatever it is we want. But essentially, with our bodies, we can take refuge, for example, like if you're staying overnight and you are looking for somewhere to stay, you might have a tent or a cave or an empty building. You would go in there for the night, taking refuge. This kuti here is my refuge. This is KAYAVIVEKA. This is where my body, my physical being takes refuge. But what about this citta, this heart mind? Where can that take refuge? Well, firstly, where is it? Well, it isn't in here. It isn't in here. It isn't in your heart. It isn't behind your eyes or in your skull. It isn't anywhere. It just knows of your existence. It knows what's going on. It's awareness, conscious awareness. And this cannot be enclosed. it exists in infinite spaciousness. But it can, and timelessness, in fact, but it can take refuge in arupa, non-form, viveka, refuges. And these can be of many kinds. Just the understanding, the wisdom and the knowledge of our characteristics of existence, of anicca, impermanence, of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, not self or out of our control, is in its very self such a deep understanding. It is refuge for the citta. When we are in a situation we don't like and we'd rather be elsewhere, we know it is impermanent. We know we are suffering and this is normal. But we also know how we are experiencing suffering to a large extent physically is out of our control, and even mentally, emotionally is out of our control too. That is, until you understand that anicca, dukkha, anatta are always there, having a direct influence on your very existence. If you ignore them, your very existence will only be leaning towards more suffering. If you understand them and you've come to know them through experiential practice, you will have no problems with what is occurring in any given moment, because you have the understanding of its nature, of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and it not being in your control. And over time, with this practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, just broken down simply into sila, samadhi, panya, moral virtue, meditation, and developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states, very soon, but over a little time, but quite soon, one develops this refuge in the truth, in the Dharma. So we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And the Buddha is the assurance that a human being, a man, with no knowledge of this Dharma, was able to sit and practice this sila, samadhi, and panya with no instruction, because he was a Samma Sambuddha. He had to understand this for himself. He discovered it, and was able then to teach to others. We have that reassurance that someone's done that work for us, and then passed this Dharma on as his legacy, and left this Sangha to teach us, to show us by example, not by books, not by talking, not by instruction, but by living that life as close to the Buddha's and his close disciples' lives as possible, by their very example for other monastics, junior and more senior, and lay people to follow. This is the path to happiness. This is the path to contentment. The Buddha said the greatest happiness is contentment. And even if you're in a situation whereby you are uncomfortable, you're disliking it, you can find contentment with this understanding of its impermanent nature. Likewise, when you're enjoying something, rather than having the regret or sadness when this thing you're enjoying comes to an end, by already knowing its impermanent nature, you will experience less suffering. So this practice is all about reducing suffering and eventually becoming free from suffering, if possible in this lifetime, in order to attain to Nibbana, to enlightenment. So I found myself in this situation with hundreds of monks and thousands of people, able to this time just take refuge in this knowledge and security of understanding what it was about, what this occasion was all about. It was celebrating this very fact that we have the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And rather than pushing against it and thinking, no, I'd rather be at home or in the forest meditating, I thought, yes, you're here to experience all you can of this tradition in a Buddhist country. After all, that is why I have come here. And there I was able to, a very different experience to this one. And now the experience I'm having here, again, is changed. Everything is uncertain, changing all of the time. Now there is another, I don't ever know how long these monks are staying or going. The one whom joined us most recently before this latest edition seems to be sticking around, and this other one, but you see, you can't see them around now. We come together for the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Not really even that so much, but just a very short time, a part of the day we spend together. Most of our time is alone with our practice. So not much of a change, but in a very stably structured routine environment, the slightest change is noticeable. If you're living with 100 monks and 3 arrive and 3 leave, it's hardly noticeable. If you're living with 4 and 1 arrives and 1 leaves, it's very noticeable. So again, it's a matter of perspective, but understanding is wisdom. And rather than reacting and thinking, we should just be seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We have this tendency to be overthinking the simplest of things, like learning to swim. It doesn't matter how much you talk about it, think about it, try and understand it, you cannot do anything other than jump in the water and do it. Just do it. That is all you can do. You will sink or you will swim. But with practice, you will be able to float and you will swim. And it is the same. So many, thank you for all the wonderful comments and questions and statements and things you talk about. And I noticed that I don't go in, I see the comments and I always try and reply. But then I noticed that sometimes there are comments under comments under comments about one comment, and they go on like a string. Well, I'm not getting involved in conversations of a debate nature, but I happened upon, I don't know, I clicked the wrong thing this morning, saw this big long discussion and thought, this is an example of really overthinking something when we have such clear really instructions in the Four Noble Truths and Noble Eightfold Path. Whatever you think about someone's opinion, you've read, you've seen, you believe, you hope for, nothing surpasses the actual truth, the simple truth of suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and path leading to the end of suffering. Nothing can surpass that truth. and any amount of talking about all of the different ways to, and sometimes I can't see what it is one is trying to do. Is it just to keep talking, keep words coming out? Is it to just keep thinking more and more? No, this is not the idea. We want to develop wholesome mind states, which are in less activity of the mind, a mind that is settled, in order that it can see clearly, hear with understanding, smell, taste, touch, and think clearly. Not a lot, but think clearly. And the tools in which we are able to practice this in the fortunate position of being monks are a simple lifestyle of very few things, just our 8 requisites, simple accommodation in seclusion, and we aim to speak little, sleep little, and eat little, in order that we are not continually looking for something outside. We're still seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and we're still thinking. We don't stop those things. I am guilty. Sometimes I take refuge in the, and it is a very good refuge for me, the language barrier. Not being able to speak Thai, I can go through, well, all of my time here with really no argument, no conflict, no conversation. Now that is a little bit like the child who doesn't want to hear something saying, "No, mummy, no, daddy, I'm not going to hear this." But I know. So it isn't blind ignorance shutting it out. It is keeping the mind clear enough to actually really see from an observational point of view what is going on, what I need to know, and also being able to really ignore and not get involved in what I do not need to know. And this is what we can do with everything in our lives. Do you really need to know, you can ask yourself, when you're next searching for something on Google? Do you really need to know how that works, why it is, the outcome of such an event, who won this, who lost that, who's going with who's going without? Do you really need to know? Or is it just another complication which then leads to another question? Hence these strings of comments after comments after comments, which are all very nice and very happy conversations, I'm pleased to see. But it is talking. And it's not speaking little. It becomes competitive of, oh, I've got all these clever ideas and I've heard this person say this and I've heard this person say that. And what do you think of this? Well, you don't think about it. Just relax. Or if you can't relax, settle. Sit and settle. And your body will relax. And if you settle for long enough, keep your mind on just your awareness on one thing, your mind will become calm. And when your mind is calm, the emotions soften. You become more appreciative of simple things. There are no real instant results, but over time the results become very clear, very visible, if not to you, to others. And there is no getting away from the sheer enjoyment of that peace that serenity, which is what leads to equanimity, upekkha in the Pali word. And it is that equanimity which is one of the fourth of the four Brahma Viharas, that makes us able to deal with all kinds of things in everyday life. From meeting a huge python, again I met a huge python this time. I think its friend that I called an anaconda the other day, who's even more huge, is probably just a huger python, or I don't know, they're so big. But this time I didn't notice him until I was quite upon the creature. But I get used to these things here, so I'm not scared. But I've also learned that running, jumping, moving quickly isn't a good idea either. And through just this practice, I'm able either to walk on by or slowly turn around and walk the other way without too much reaction. Now, I'm not saying that is equanimity, but it's an example of knowing you have to do something, but you don't have to jump to it. It doesn't have to be the first reaction. And this in turn manifests itself in speech also. You may be able to just, we've all said something we didn't mean to say on the spur of the moment because it just came out. Sometimes, once we develop this quality of equanimity, we can think just for a few seconds before speaking, and then do a lot less harm with our words. And this goes for both acts of body, speech and mind, how we think, how we direct our thoughts. So we find CITTAVIVEKA, we find KAYAVIVEKA. It isn't a place. It's within our hearts. And where it is most obviously apparent is in those four Brahma Viharas. Vihara is just a house, a place, like a viveka, like a refuge, but a home, more than a refuge. A refuge has the idea of institutionalized safety and protection. Home is family, comfort, love, security. So Vihara is that. And those four Brahma Viharas, you'll remember, are metta, which is loving kindness, karuna, which is compassion, mudita, which is joy for others' happiness and success, and upekkha, which is equanimity. Now, by establishing this equanimity, we can also abide. Our citta, our puru, our conscious awareness, that which knows, can abide within the home-like structure of these four Brahma Viharas, comfortably, in safety, and happily, dwelling, living in loving kindness, dwelling and living in compassion and joy for other people's happiness. And this aids and assists and develops equanimity. And in turn, all of this is developing wholesome mind states, wisdom. Now, I was going to talk about the Noble Eightfold Path and 8 precepts. I'll do that next time, because today, having been away for a couple of days, and there being various holidays around the world, here more holidays beginning again with Songkran, the Thai New Year, and Easter finishing in other parts of the world. It's been a that kind of a week. So I'll try and get back to making some more regular videos, and there will be an audience, hopefully some people to watch them when everything calms down after all of these happy festivities. So on that note, I hope you've enjoyed your Easter if you're in that part of the world, and I hope you enjoy your New Year's if you're in this part of the world. And if there's something useful there today for you, please use it. Otherwise, ignore it, but please keep watching. Sabitiyo vivajantu sabarogo vinyasatu mate bhavatu antarayo sukhidigayuko bhavam bhavatu sabba mangalam ragantu sabba devata sabba buddhanupavena sadasoti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalam ragantu sabba devata sabba dhammanupavena sadasoti bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalam ragantu sabba devata sabba sangha nupavena sadasoti bhavantu te.